I pulled into the public storage lot around 9:45 at night, gas gauge sitting so low the light had been on for the last 8 miles. Didn't matter. I was there. The place sat just outside Duluth, tucked behind a Menards that had closed hours ago. My headlights swept across the chain-link fence and the rows of orange roll-up doors stretching back into the dark. I killed the engine and sat there a second, hands still on the wheel, trunk weighed down with boxes I couldn't keep hauling from one temporary spot to the next. That was it. That's why I'd taken the job. Well, that and the money. The staffing agency had called it an overnight facilities attendant position, which sounded better than what it probably was, sitting in an office for 8 hours making sure nobody broke in. But it paid $17 an hour, cash bonus if I stuck it out for 30 days, and they threw in a free storage unit for as long as I worked there. I needed all 3. The layoff had come back in March. Software company out of Minneapolis, the kind that hired remote workers and then cut half of them when a funding round fell through. I'd been good at the job. Didn't matter. They'd gutted my department in one morning, sent the email at 8:30, and by 9:15 my access was revoked and I was staring at my kitchen table wondering what the hell came next. Savings lasted 2 months. I'd tried picking up freelance gigs, some web design work, but nothing stuck. Rent was due, then past due. Then my landlord started texting instead of calling, which meant he was documenting everything and I was probably 30 days from eviction. And yeah, I'd tried reaching out to Sarah, my ex. We'd ended things back in January, one of those slow collapses where neither of us did anything wrong, but we couldn't figure out how to be right together. I thought maybe, with everything falling apart, she'd want to talk, maybe grab coffee. I don't know what I thought. She didn't. She'd been polite about it. That was worse, probably. Just a short text saying she hoped I figured things out, but she didn't think it was a good idea for us to meet up. I read it twice, then deleted her number so I wouldn't be tempted to try again. So when the staffing agency called about an overnight shift with a signing bonus and free storage, I said yes before the woman finished explaining the job. Didn't even ask what the work was. Figured it didn't matter. I popped the trunk and climbed out. The air smelled like asphalt and pine, that deep woods scent you get this far north even when you're standing in a parking lot. It was late April, still cold enough at night that I pulled my jacket tighter and wished I'd grabbed the heavier one. The lot was bigger than I'd expected. The fence ran all the way around, maybe 10 feet tall with barbed wire curled along the top, and the units stretched back in neat rows, 3 stories of them stacked in places. Floodlights were mounted on poles every 50 feet or so, but half of them were out, leaving big pockets of shadow between the working ones. Empty lots spread out on the other side of the fence. Just gravel and weeds, a few pieces of rusted equipment that might have belonged to a construction company once. Past that, Highway 53 ran north toward the Iron Range, and every 20 seconds a pair of headlights would sweep across the fence line, bright and fast, then disappear. The light never quite reached the units, though. It hit the fence and stopped, like the place had its own bubble of dark. I grabbed the duffel bag I'd packed, thermos of coffee, a sandwich, my phone charger, a book I probably wouldn't read, and locked the car. The office sat near the front gate, a small prefab building with vinyl siding and a glass door. The lights were on inside, bright and flat, the kind of fluorescent glare that makes everything look a little sick. I crossed the lot and pulled the door open. The woman inside looked up from a clipboard. She was maybe mid-30s, blonde hair cut neat and professional, gray eyes that didn't give much away. She wore a blazer over a white blouse, slacks, practical flats, the kind of outfit that said she had other places to be, and this wasn't one of them. "Xavier Finley?" she said. "Yeah." "Rebecca Herrera, staffing agency." She set the clipboard down and reached for a manila envelope sitting on the desk. You're right on time. I wasn't really. I was 15 minutes early, but I didn't correct her. She moved fast, like she was trying to get through a checklist before something interrupted her. She slid a key ring across the desk, heavy, maybe a dozen keys on it, and scribbled a 4-digit code on a sticky note. Keys are labeled, she said. Front gate, office, restrooms, storage units, A through F. The codes for the keypad at the main entrance. Changes monthly, but you'll get the new one before that happens. I picked up the keys. They were cold, worn smooth in places. Got it. Phone's on the desk. She gestured to an old landline, the kind with a coiled cord and a base unit that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 90s. It only dials one number. If you need to reach someone, use that. I waited for her to say whose number it was. She didn't. What if I need to call 911? I asked. She hesitated, just a fraction of a second. Use your cell for that. Okay. She picked up the manila envelope again and held it out. It was sealed, my name written across the front in blue ink. You need to read this before midnight. Instructions for the shift. Don't open it before you're ready to start. I took it. The paper felt thick, expensive. Why not now? Just don't. That bugged me a little, but I let it go. She was already moving again, gathering her blazer from the back of the chair and picking up her purse. Security cameras, she said, nodding toward a monitor in the corner. The screen was split into 4 sections, each one showing a different angle of the lot. Except 2 of the feeds were just static, gray and crackling. They're quirky. Don't rely on them. Quirky how? They cut out sometimes, or they don't record right. Just check the lot in person if you think something's wrong. I glanced at the monitor. The 2 working feeds showed the front gate and a section of units near the back. Nothing moved. Got it. She slung her purse over her shoulder and headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. Her expression hadn't changed, but something in her posture had tightened. You have everything you need? I think so. Good. Don't leave the property during your shift. Don't let anyone in after midnight. Read the envelope. She said it fast, like she was checking off boxes, and then she was gone, the door swinging shut behind her. I stepped to the window and watched her cross the lot to a silver sedan parked near the fence. She didn't look back. Just unlocked the car, climbed in, and pulled out onto the access road, tail lights disappearing toward the highway. The silence hit me then. Not the kind where you notice the quiet, but the kind where the quiet notices you. I turned back to the office. It was small, maybe 12 by 12, with a metal desk, a rolling chair that squeaked when I sat down, and a filing cabinet shoved into the corner. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, a sound I knew I'd stop hearing in about 20 minutes, but that felt loud now. The monitor flickered, one of the static feeds jumping for a second before settling back into gray noise. The envelope sat on the desk in front of me. I checked my phone. 9:58. 2 minutes until 10. The start of my shift. I set the keys down next to the envelope and leaned back in the chair, staring at my name written across the front. The ink was neat, careful, like someone had taken their time. The building settled around me, a faint creak from somewhere overhead. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the chain-link fence. I figured I'd wait until 10 to open it, follow the instructions, do the job, collect the check. That was the plan anyway. I picked up the envelope at 10:02. The seal came off clean. 1 sheet inside, standard printer paper, white and crisp. No coffee stains, no wrinkles. It had been folded once, perfectly centered. The header sat at the top in bold caps. Overnight protocol. Below that, a list, numbered 1 through 5. Each entry had a time or condition attached. The formatting was tight, no extra spacing, nothing fancy, probably made in Word or something. Someone had printed this, slid it in the envelope, written my name on the outside in pen, and sealed it up. I set it flat on the desk. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. One of them flickered again, same rhythm as before. The monitor in the corner cycled through its 4 feeds. 2 static, 2 working. I could hear the chain link fence rattling outside in the wind. I read the first rule. 1. Lock the office door at 9:10 p.m. Do not unlock until 6 a.m. under any circumstances. 9:10, that was specific, not 9. Not 9:15, 9:10, exactly. I checked my phone, 10:03. The second rule sat right below. 2. Answer the lobby phone only on the 3rd ring. Never before, never after. I looked at the landline on the desk. Old beige model with a coiled cord. Rebecca said it only dialed 1 number. She didn't say who called in. I guess now I knew someone would. 3rd ring. That was it. 3. Do not look at the camera monitor labeled Unit B17 between midnight and 12:15 a.m. I glanced at the monitor. 4 sections. 2 showed static. The other 2 cycled between the front gate and what looked like the back row of units. I didn't see any labels on the screen itself. Maybe they were written on the monitor frame or something. I'd have to check. Don't look at it. 15 minutes. Midnight to 12:15. Weird, but not impossible. 4. After 1:30 a.m., if someone knocks on the office door, do not open it. Do not speak. Slide the visitor log under the door and wait. I paused on that one. Visitor log, I hadn't seen one yet. I scanned the desk. No clipboard, no binder. Maybe it was in the filing cabinet, or maybe they'd give me one later. The rule assumed I'd have it, so it had to be somewhere. After 1:30. Don't open the door. Don't speak. Just slide the log under and wait. That part bugged me a little. 5. If you smell bleach at any time during your shift, retrieve the earmuffs from the top drawer of the desk and wear them until the smell passes. Do not remove them early. Bleach. Earmuffs. I stared at that line for a second. Then I pulled open the top drawer. Inside, 2 pens, a stack of sticky notes, a roll of masking tape, and a pair of earmuffs still in the plastic packaging. The kind you'd wear at a shooting range or a construction site. Bright orange, heavy duty. The package had never been opened. I picked them up. The plastic crinkled. They felt solid, real. I set them back in the drawer and closed it. So that was the list. 5 rules, some with times, some with conditions, all of them specific enough that someone had thought them through. I read the whole thing again from the top. Locked the door at 9:10, answered the phone on the 3rd ring, didn't look at B17 between midnight and 12:15, slid the visitor log under the door after 1:30 if someone knocked, wore earmuffs if I smelled bleach. That was it. No explanation. No context. Just instructions. The paper didn't say what happened if I broke one. I folded the paper and set it back on the desk. The rules sat there, waiting. I figured I should at least check if the place matched what they were talking about. Visitor log, camera labels, the door lock itself. I stood up. The chair squeaked. I grabbed the keyring off the desk and walked to the office door. It opened outward. Standard commercial door with a small window at eye level, metal frame, weather stripping around the edges. The lock was a deadbolt, keyed from both sides. I tested the handle, turned fine from inside. The door opened smooth. Outside, the lot stretched out under the floodlights, rows of orange roll-up doors, shadows between the working lights and the dead ones. No movement. No cars except mine. I stepped out. The air was cooler than I expected. Wind came across the empty lots beyond the fence, carrying the smell of dirt and old asphalt. The chain link rattled again. I could hear the highway in the distance, steady hum of traffic heading north. I started walking. The first row of units sat about 20 feet from the office. Each door had a number stenciled in white paint. A1, A2, A3. Padlocks on all of them. Different kinds. Some combination locks, some keyed. All of them looked used, scratched up, weathered. I kept going. The aisles between rows were wide enough for a pickup truck. Gravel and cracked pavement. A few weeds growing through. Dust on everything. I passed B row, C row. The 3-story units started around D. Metal staircases bolted to the outside, leading up to the 2nd and 3rd levels. They creaked a little when the wind hit them. Nothing moved. I reached the back fence and turned around. From here, I could see the whole facility. The office glowed under its floodlight near the front gate. My car sat alone in the parking area. The rest was just rows and shadows and those big light poles every 50 feet. Normal, just a storage lot. I walked back toward the office, taking a different route. Past E row, F row, more of the same. Orange doors, padlocks, dust. One unit had a dent in the door, bottom right corner. Another had rust streaking down from the handle. Small details. Nothing strange. Back inside, I locked the door behind me. The office felt smaller now. I sat down and checked my phone. 10:14. I looked at the monitor again. The feeds cycled. Front gate, back units, static, static. I leaned closer, checking the frame. There, small strips of masking tape on the bottom edge of the screen. Someone had written on them in marker. Top left, gate. Top right, B row. Bottom left and right were blank, just static. I watched the B row feed. It showed a section of units, probably somewhere in the middle of that row. The angle was high, looking down. I could see 3 doors, part of the aisle, a light pole. The image was grainy, washed out. It flickered every few seconds. No label for B17 specifically. Just B row. I'd have to figure out which unit was 17 when midnight got closer. Or maybe I'd just avoid looking at the whole monitor during that 15-minute window. Easier that way. I opened the filing cabinet. 3 drawers. Top one had hanging folders with labels. Lease agreements. Insurance. Maintenance logs. Middle drawer had more folders, some empty. Bottom drawer had a cardboard box with old invoices and a flashlight with dead batteries. No visitor log. I checked the desk drawers again. Top one had the earmuffs and pens. Side drawer had nothing but dust and a bent paperclip. Bottom drawer was empty except for an old phone book from 2016. I stood up and looked around. The log had to be here. The rules said to slide it under the door. You can't slide something you don't have. Then I saw it. Clipboard hanging on a hook by the filing cabinet, half hidden behind the door when it was open. I walked over and pulled it down. Visitor log printed across the top. Columns for date, time, name, unit number, signature. The page was blank. The clip held maybe 20 sheets, all blank. There it was. I hung it back on the hook. Everything the protocol mentioned existed. The earmuffs in the drawer, the visitor log on the wall, the camera feed labeled B row, the landline on the desk, the door with its keyed deadbolt. Someone had written those rules because they needed to be followed. I sat back down, checked my phone, 10:17. The first rule said to lock the door at 9:10. I'd missed that by over an hour, but Rebecca had told me the shift started at 10. She'd handed me the envelope and said not to open it before I was ready to start. So maybe the rules were from a previous shift schedule. Or maybe I was supposed to adjust them. Or maybe I'd already messed up. I picked up the protocol sheet again, read the first line. Lock the office door at 9:10 p. The phone rang at 10:40. I know the exact time because I was staring at the wall clock when it happened. One of those round institutional clocks with a white face and black numbers. The kind that ticks loud enough to hear when everything else is quiet. The ring cut through the office, old-fashioned, shrill. Not like a cell phone, more like a fire alarm, but shorter. I looked at the phone on the desk. Beige plastic, coiled cord. The handset sat in its cradle and the whole thing vibrated slightly with each ring. Rule 2. Answer on the third ring. Never before. Never after. First ring. I kept my eyes on the clock. The second hand swept past the 6. Second ring. My hand moved to the handset, but I didn't lift it. Just rested my fingers on the plastic. It was warm. Probably from sitting under the fluorescent lights all night. The second hand hit the 12. Third ring. I picked up. Hello? Static filled the line, not silence. Actual static, the kind you get on AM radio when you're between stations. It crackled and hissed, and underneath it I thought I heard something else. Wind, maybe. Or breathing. Then a man's voice came through. Calm. Even. Not friendly exactly, but not hostile either. Unit C9. Unit D14. Unit F22. He said them like he was reading off a grocery list. No inflection. Just stating facts. I didn't say anything. Didn't know what to say. Xavier. He used my name. Just dropped it in there. Casual. Like he already knew exactly who would answer. My hand tightened on the handset. You've done fine so far, he said. Still that same calm tone. Just remember, don't use the main hallway after midnight. I opened my mouth, not sure what I was going to say. Maybe ask who this was. Maybe ask what main hallway. The line went dead. Not a click, not a hang-up sound. Just dead air. Then the dial tone kicking in a second later. I sat there holding the phone for probably 5 seconds before I put it back in the cradle. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me a little. I felt calm. Or maybe just blank. Like my brain hadn't caught up yet. I looked at the phone. There was a small display screen above the number pad. One of those green backlit ones that shows the time and caller ID on some models. It was blank. Not showing unknown caller or no caller ID. Just blank. Dark. Like the call never happened. I picked up the handset again and checked for a dial tone. It was there. Normal. I put the phone back down. The protocol sheet was still on the desk where I'd left it. I scanned through the rules again. Nothing about phone calls, just Rule 2. Answer on the third ring. It didn't say what to expect when I answered. Didn't say who might call. I stood up. The chair squeaked. The office computer sat on the corner of the desk. Old desktop model with a thick monitor. I'd noticed it earlier but hadn't touched it. The screen was on, showing a basic desktop with a few folder icons. I moved the mouse. The cursor responded. There was a folder labeled Security Feeds. I double-clicked it. A window opened showing the same 4-panel view as the monitor in the corner. Same feeds. Gate on the top left, B-row on the top right, static on the bottom 2. I clicked through the panels. The software let me expand each feed to full screen. Gate first. Empty. Chain link fence. The access road beyond it. Darkness past that. A car passed on the highway in the distance. Headlights swept across the frame and disappeared. Back to the 4-panel view. I clicked on B-row. The feed expanded. 3 unit doors, part of an aisle. A light pole casting everything in that orange sodium glow. No movement, no people. Just metal doors with padlocks and concrete. I watched it for maybe 10 seconds. Nothing changed. Back to the 4-panel view. The bottom 2 feeds were still static. I clicked on one anyway. The static filled the screen, jumping and crackling. I closed it. I checked the other monitor, the actual security monitor mounted on the wall. Same 4 feeds, same static on the bottom 2. I looked at the labels on the bottom edge. Gate, B-row. The other 2 had no labels. Then I noticed something. There was a 5th label, tucked almost out of sight on the far right edge of the monitor frame. I leaned closer. B-17, written in faded marker on a piece of masking tape. I looked at the feeds again. Top left, gate. Top right, B-row. Bottom left, static. bottom right, static. None of them were labeled B17. I touched the monitor frame. There was a small button on the side. I pressed it. The feeds changed. Top left still showed the gate. Top right switched to a different angle. Bottom left flickered and resolved into a hallway view. Bottom right stayed static. The bottom left feed, that was B17. It showed a hallway, narrow, concrete floor. A row of unit doors on the right side, maybe 4 or 5 visible in the frame. Overhead lights, but dimmer than the outdoor floods. The angle looked like it was mounted high on the opposite wall, pointing down the corridor. Nothing moved, just an empty hallway. I checked the clock. 10:48. Rule 3. Don't look at the camera monitor labeled B17 between midnight and 12:15. I was looking at it now. That was fine. It was only 10:48, but I needed to make sure I didn't look at it after midnight. I opened the top desk drawer, grabbed one of the pens and the sticky notepad. I wrote, "Do not look at B17 midnight 12:15. Block letters. Clear. I peeled off the sticky note and pressed it onto the monitor frame right above the bottom left feed. Right above B17, the note stayed, bright yellow against the black plastic. I sat back down. The office settled around me. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The heater kicked on with a metallic rattle, pushing warm air through a vent near the filing cabinet. Outside, the wind picked up. I could hear it moving through the chain-link fence, a soft rattling sound, rhythmic. I checked my phone. 10:51. 9 minutes until midnight. I thought about the voice on the phone. Calm, using my name. "You've done fine so far." Fine doing what? Showing up? Reading the protocol, not screwing up yet, and the warning. Don't use the main hallway after midnight. I'd walked the whole facility earlier. Rows of units, aisles between them. I hadn't seen anything labeled main hallway. Maybe it was inside one of the buildings. The 3-story sections in D and E rows had staircases. Maybe there were interior hallways I hadn't seen. Didn't matter. I wasn't planning to leave the office anyway. Rule 1 said lock the door and don't unlock it until 6 in the morning. I'd locked it at 10:17, right after I'd hung the visitor log back on its hook. The heater cycled off. The rattling stopped. Silence filled the space it left behind. Not total silence. The fluorescent lights still buzzed. The clock still ticked. But the absence of the heater made everything feel quieter. I looked at the security monitor. Gate, B row, B17, static, all empty, all still. 10:54. I opened my duffel bag and pulled out the thermos, unscrewed the cap. The coffee was still hot. I'd made it at 7, right before I left. French roast. No cream, no sugar. I poured some into the cap and drank it, bitter and strong. The clock ticked. 10:56. I put the thermos back in the bag. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out. Text from a number I didn't recognize. Probably spam. I deleted it without reading and put the phone face down on the desk. The building creaked. Overhead, a settling sound. Old prefab construction expanding and contracting with the temperature. 10:58. I watched the second hand sweep around the clock face. Smooth motion, no stuttering. The heater kicked on again. Same metallic rattle, same warm air. I pulled the protocol sheet closer and read through it one more time. 5 rules, simple, clear. Lock the door at 10. Answer the phone on the 3rd ring. Don't look at B17 between midnight and 12:15. If someone knocks after 1:30, slide the visitor log under the door. If I smell bleach, put on the earmuffs. I'd done the first 2. 3 more to go. Maybe none of them would happen. Maybe it would just be a quiet night. 6 hours of sitting here, then Rebecca would show up at 6 in the morning and I'd hand her the keys and go home. Probably not, though. 11 o'clock. 1 hour until midnight. I leaned back in the chair. It squeaked again. I made a mental note to see if there was any WD-40 in the filing cabinet. The wind rattled the fence outside. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The clock ticked. I kept my eyes on the monitor and waited. The sticky note fell at midnight exactly. I was watching the clock tick over from 11:59 to 12:00, and the second that happened, the yellow square just peeled off the monitor frame and dropped into my lap. Didn't flutter, didn't drift, just fell straight down. I looked at it sitting there on my jeans, my handwriting in block letters. Do not look at B17, midnight 12:15. And that's when I glanced up. I didn't mean to. It was reflex. The note fell. My eyes tracked up to where it had been, and there was the B17 feed right there in the bottom left quadrant. There was someone standing in the hallway, not down the hall, not walking past. Standing right there, inches from the camera, close enough that the image warped around them. The lens couldn't handle it. The whole feed bulged a little at the center, the way a fisheye lens distorts things, except this camera had been normal 2 seconds ago. I tried to focus on the face. Couldn't. It wasn't blurred exactly. More like the camera kept trying to focus and failing, over and over, that constant hunting thing a lens does when it can't lock on. But this was a fixed security camera. Shouldn't have been doing that at all. The figure didn't move, just stood there, completely still. The hallway behind them looked wet. The concrete floor had that dark shine you get after mopping, reflective patches under the overhead lights. I could see the reflection of the lights in the floor, could see the unit doors down the corridor in the background. But the person, the face, wouldn't resolve. I jerked back hard enough that the chair wheels squeaked. My hands hit the armrests and I shoved, rolling backward until the chair hit the filing cabinet with a metal clang that made me flinch. My heart was going, proper hammering. I grabbed the first thing within reach. A file folder from the desk corner, blue plastic with nothing in it. I lunged forward and slapped it over the monitor, covering all 4 feeds, held it there with both hands. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Same rhythm they'd had all night. The heater rattled in the vent. Wind hit the chain link fence outside. I was breathing too fast. I made myself count to 10. Then I lifted the folder just enough to see the other 3 feeds. Top left, gate camera. Empty access road, chain link fence, distant highway with a single pair of headlights passing north. Normal. Top right, B-row exterior. 3 orange unit doors. The aisle between rows. The light pole, no movement, no people, normal. Bottom right, static. Same crackling gray-white noise it had been showing since I got here. I let the folder drop back down over the whole screen. The clock on the wall read 12:01. 14 more minutes. I pushed the chair back again, putting another foot of distance between me and the monitor. The folder stayed where I'd left it, propped at an angle against the screen. Part of it slid down. I could see the top edge of the gate feed, just the very top where the barbed wire caught the light. I looked away. My thermos was on the desk. I unscrewed the cap with hands that felt steadier than they should have been and took a drink. Coffee was still warm, French roast, bitter, no cream. I'd made it 7 hours ago in my apartment before driving up here. That felt like a different day. I set the thermos down and checked my phone. 12:02. No messages. No signal bars, actually. I'd had 2 bars when I got here at 9:45. 12:03. The building creaked overhead. Settling sounds. Temperature changes, probably. Old metal expanding and contracting. Probably. I picked up the protocol sheet from the desk and read Rule 3 again. If you look at camera monitor B17 between midnight and 12:15 a.m., do not look at it. That's not what it said. I read it again. Rule 3. Do not look at camera monitor labeled Unit B17 between midnight and 12:15 a.m. Right. Don't look, which I'd just done. I put the paper down. The sticky note was still in my lap. I picked it up, folded it in half, and shoved it in my pocket. 12:05. 10 more minutes. I stood up. Couldn't sit still anymore. The office was 12 by 12 feet. Not a lot of room to pace. But I walked to the filing cabinet and back to the desk. Then to the door. Pressed my ear against it. Nothing outside. No footsteps. No voices. Just wind and the hum of the floodlights. I checked the peephole. Too dark to see much. The nearest light pole was 50 feet away, and half the bulbs in this lot didn't work anyway. 12:07. I went back to the desk and looked at the monitor. The folder had slid down further. Now I could see the top half of the gate feed and part of the B-row feed. No movement in either. I left the folder where it was. My duffel bag was on the floor by the chair. I'd packed a sandwich in there. Turkey and cheese on wheat bread that I'd made this morning. Seemed like a good idea at the time. I wasn't hungry now. 12:09. I sat back down. The chair squeaked. I really should have looked for WD-40 earlier. The heater kicked off. The sudden silence was worse than the noise. I could hear the clock ticking. Hadn't noticed that before. Cheap wall clock, white plastic face, black hands. Second hand jerking forward in little mechanical jumps. Tick, 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 12:11. I picked up my phone again. Still no signal. I opened the browser anyway. Waited for it to fail to load. It did. I closed it. 12:12. 3 more minutes. The caller on the phone earlier had used my name. Told me I'd done fine so far. Then warned me not to use the main hallway after midnight. I still hadn't figured out where the main hallway was. The B-17 feed showed a hallway. Narrow corridor with unit doors on the right side. Maybe that was it. Maybe someone was still standing there. I looked at the folder covering the monitor. 12:13. The fluorescent lights buzzed. One of them flickered, just once, then steadied. I folded my arms, unfolded them. Picked up the pen from the desk and clicked it a few times, put it down. 12:14. The wind hit the building, rattled something loose outside, metal on metal. 12:15. I waited another 30 seconds. Then I reached out and moved the folder aside. All 4 feeds visible again. I looked at the bottom left. B-17 hallway. Empty. The corridor stretched back under the overhead lights, concrete floor, unit doors on the right side visible in a row. Every single door was open, not just one. All of them. 5 unit doors in frame, all rolled up, the dark squares of the open units showing behind them. I leaned closer. They'd been closed before. I'd watched that feed at 10:48 when I first found it, and the doors had been shut. Orange metal roll-up doors, same as every other unit in this place. All of them pulled down and locked. Now they were open. All at once. I checked the other feeds. Gate, empty. B-row exterior, doors closed, no movement. Static feed, still static, just B-17. I looked back at that hallway. The doors were all the way up, rolled into their housings. The storage units behind them were dark. The camera angle was too high to see inside, just black rectangles where the interiors were. The floor still looked wet. I pushed back from the desk and turned in the chair, scanning the office. Landline phone on the desk, computer in the corner, filing cabinet, no radio. I checked the desk drawers. Top drawer, pens, sticky notes, masking tape, earmuffs still in plastic. Second drawer, empty except for an old stapler. Bottom drawer, manila folders, blank paper, a broken 3-hole punch, no radio. I stood up and checked the filing cabinet. Top drawer, lease agreements, insurance, maintenance logs. Middle drawer, more folders, some empty, some with papers I didn't read. Bottom drawer, cardboard box with invoices, flashlight with dead batteries. No radio, no walkie-talkie, no emergency contact list. I went back to the desk and picked up the protocol sheet, flipped it over, blank on the back. Flipped it again and scanned all 5 rules. Nothing about a radio. Nothing about who to contact. Nothing about what to do if something happened. Just the rules. I looked at the phone. Beige plastic, coiled cord, no buttons except the number pad. Rebecca had said it only dialed one number, hadn't said whose. The phone just sat there, silent. I checked the time on the wall clock, 12:18. The building was quiet, heater off, lights buzzing their steady rhythm, wind outside. But it felt different now. Controlled, maybe, like the silence was deliberate. Like something was waiting for me to do something and the quiet was making space for it. I sat back down in the squeaking chair and kept my eyes on the monitor. The B-17 hallway stayed empty. The doors stayed open. The phone didn't ring. I needed something solid to hold on to. The monitor feeds weren't helping. The B-17 hallway still showed those 5 open unit doors with dark rectangles behind them, and the wet-looking floor that shouldn't have been wet. I couldn't stare at it anymore. I turned to the desk and pulled out the sticky notepad, flipped through my earlier notes. Nothing useful there. Just the warning I'd written about B-17 that fell off the monitor at exactly midnight. I shoved the pad back in the drawer and stood up. The chair squeaked. I walked to the filing cabinet and opened the top drawer again, pulled out the folder labeled Lease Agreements. Inside were maybe 20 forms, all filled out in different handwriting. Names I didn't recognize. Unit numbers scattered across A through F rows. I closed it and tried the maintenance log folder. The maintenance log had entries going back 6 months. Most of it was boring stuff. Replaced bulb in B row on March 12th. Fixed lock on Unit A8 March 24th. Gate keypad battery changed April 2nd. I kept flipping. The last entry was from 2 weeks ago. Replaced fence chain April 18th. Nothing after that. I put the folder back and closed the drawer. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I checked the wall clock. 12:24. The gate camera still showed the gate. Chain link fence, access road beyond it, empty pavement under the floodlights. No cars, no movement. I moved closer to the monitor and studied the feed. The gate looked shut, definitely shut. The keypad next to it had a small green light that meant the system was armed. I squinted at the timestamp in the corner of the feed. It updated every second. 12:25 a.m. I walked back to the desk and sat down. My phone was still face down where I'd left it. I flipped it over. Still no signal. Just the time glowing at me. 12:25. I opened the Notes app and typed keypad log into the search bar, then deleted it. That was stupid. The keypad log wasn't on my phone. I stood again and went to the filing cabinet, middle drawer this time. I pulled it open and rifled through the folders until I found one labeled Access Log. Inside were printouts, thermal paper that had faded in places. Each line showed a timestamp, a code entered, and whether the gate opened or closed. I scanned down to today's date. The last entry read 8:52 p.m., code accepted. Gate opened. No entry after that. I'd arrived at 9:45. Rebecca left around 9:50. Neither of us had logged out through the keypad because we'd used the pedestrian gate next to the office. But if someone else had come in after that, there'd be a record. Nothing. I closed the folder and shoved the drawer shut. The gate was locked. No one had entered since 8:52. That was something. A fact. I could work with facts. I tested the office door again. Walked over, gripped the handle, pulled. Locked. Solid. The deadbolt was engaged. I'd locked it at 10:17 and it hadn't moved since. I pressed my ear to the door again. Wind. The hum of the floodlights. Nothing else. The building felt wrong, though. Too still. Not quiet exactly. Still. The kind of stillness that made me aware of my own breathing. I stepped back from the door and looked around the office. 12 by 12 feet. Metal desk, squeaking chair, filing cabinet, monitor. The heater vent near the cabinet. The fluorescent lights overhead. Everything exactly where it had been. I sat back down. Checked the clock. 12:31. My thermos was on the desk. I unscrewed the cap and drank. The coffee was lukewarm now, bitter. I screwed the cap back on and set it down. The monitor still showed the B-17 hallway with those 5 open doors. I looked away. At 1:12, the smell hit. Bleach, sharp and chemical, pushing through the vent near the filing cabinet. Not faint, not subtle. It filled the room in seconds, thick enough that I could taste it in the back of my throat. I shoved the chair back and yanked open the top desk drawer. The earmuffs were still in their plastic packaging. I ripped it open, tore through the cellophane with my thumb, and pulled the orange earmuffs out. I put them on. The foam pads pressed against my ears and the world went muffled. The fluorescent buzz faded. The heater rattle disappeared. The bleach smell got worse. It surged, flooded the office, made my eyes water. I kept the earmuffs on. Rule 5 said, wear them until the smell passes. Don't remove them early. I sat there breathing through my mouth, trying not to gag. The odor peaked, then started to ease. Slowly. I counted to 30, then 60. The chemical burn in my nose faded to something tolerable. Then I felt it through the floor. A faint vibration, barely there. I pressed my feet flat against the concrete and waited. It came again, a low scraping sound I couldn't hear but could feel through my shoes. Rhythmic. Slow. It moved. I stood up. The vibration tracked along the left wall of the office, past the filing cabinet, paused, then continued along the back wall behind the desk, something wet dragging over concrete. That's what it felt like. Heavy, deliberate. I couldn't hear it because of the earmuffs, but I felt it circle the office. Left wall, back wall, right wall toward the door. It stopped near the door. The vibration faded. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. The bleach smell was almost gone. Just a faint trace left. I pulled the earmuffs off, and the office sounds rushed back in. Fluorescent buzz, heater rattle, wind outside. I checked the clock. 1:23. I put the earmuffs on the desk and sat back down. My hands were shaking a little. I pressed them flat on the desk until they stopped. At 1:37, someone knocked on the door. 3 knocks. Measured, deliberate, evenly spaced. I didn't move. Rule 4 said if someone knocks after 1:30, don't open it. Don't speak. Slide the visitor log under the door and wait. I stood and walked to the filing cabinet. The visitor log clipboard was hanging on the hook where I'd left it. I grabbed it. 20 blank sheets with columns for date, time, name, unit number, signature. I carried it to the door. I crouched down. The gap under the door was maybe half an inch. I slid the clipboard underneath, angling it so it would fit. It scraped against the concrete and disappeared on the other side. I waited. 30 seconds passed, a minute. I heard nothing through the door. Then the clipboard slid back. I grabbed it and stood up fast, carried it to the desk under the fluorescent light. The top sheet had a new entry, blue ink, neat handwriting. The signature line read Rebecca Herrera in cursive. The name column said the same. The time column read 1:35 a.m. Unit number was blank. Below the signature, in the same handwriting, someone had written, "Please unlock the door. Fire inspector arrived early. Need access to office records." I stared at the pen strokes. The letters were too perfect, too uniform. Rebecca's signature when she'd handed me the envelope had been quick, a scrawl. This looked like someone had traced it, copied it. The pressure was wrong too. Some letters pressed darker than others, but not in a natural way, in a way that suggested someone practicing the loops. I set the clipboard down. The knocks came again, heavier this time, 4 of them, faster. I stepped back from the door. The handle turned, slowly, testing the lock. It rattled once, then stopped. I crouched down and looked at the gap under the door. The darkness there looked wrong, too deep. The hallway outside should have been lit by the floodlights, some ambient glow coming through. but the strip of shadow under the door was black, complete. Like the space on the other side went down further than it should have. I stood up and backed away from the door until my legs hit the desk chair. The phone rang again at 1:43. I looked at it. The beige handset sat in its cradle, the ringer going steady and mechanical. I counted in my head. 4 rings. 5. I'd missed the third. Rule 2 said answer on the third ring, never before or after, and I'd been staring at the visitor log when it started, probably around ring 2. I didn't pick up. The ringing didn't stop. It kept going. 6 rings. 7. 8. The sound was patient. That bugged me more than anything else. It wasn't frantic or angry, it just continued, steady and even, waiting for something I couldn't give it anymore. I looked away from the phone and back at the monitor. The B-17 feed flickered. Just once. A quick stutter in the image, then it settled. I tried not to look. I focused on the gate camera instead, watching the chain-link fence and empty access road under the floodlights. Nothing there, just pavement and darkness beyond the lot. My eyes pulled back to B-17 anyway. The figure was there again, not at the camera this time. Deeper in the corridor, maybe 20 feet back, standing in the middle of the hallway between 2 unit doors. The image quality was bad, grainy, but I could see enough. Black jacket, dark pants, a badge clipped to the chest pocket. I leaned forward. The badge had a white rectangular shape with text I couldn't read, but the layout matched mine exactly. Staffing agency ID. Same size, same clip. And on the right sleeve of the jacket I saw a stripe. Reflective material, about 2 inches wide, running horizontal across the bicep. I looked down at my own jacket. Plain gray hoodie, but underneath I still had my work jacket from the staffing agency onboarding. Navy blue with a reflective stripe on the right sleeve. Exactly where the figure's was. The phone kept ringing. 14 rings now. 15. On the monitor, the figure moved. Not smoothly. It jerked forward in short bursts, like a video buffering every half second. Stop. Lurch. Stop. Lurch. Each time it moved, maybe a foot closer to the camera. The corridor lighting didn't change, but the figure's face stayed in shadow. I couldn't see features. Just the outline of a head and shoulders and that badge on the chest. Behind the figure, one of the unit doors started rolling down. The orange metal door lowered slowly, the mechanical rattle cutting through the office even though the monitor had no speakers. I heard it anyway. Or maybe I just remembered what that sound was supposed to be. The door clanged shut. The phone rang again at the exact same moment. Ring 16. Another unit door started closing. Same slow descent. Same rattle and clang when it hit the concrete floor. Ring 17 landed perfectly in sync with the clang. I sat back in the chair. The figure jerked forward again. 2 more feet closer. Now maybe 15 feet from the camera. Still too far to see the face, but close enough that I could tell the jacket wasn't quite right. The fabric looked stiff. The sleeves hung wrong, too long or too loose. The reflective stripe caught the overhead lights in the hallway and flared white in the camera feed. Another door closed. Another ring. I finally got it. The protocol wasn't just rules. It was timing. The whole thing was designed to keep me off balance, to prevent me from syncing up with whatever the hell was happening out there at night. Answer the phone on the 3rd ring specifically. Don't look at B-17 between midnight and 12:15 exactly. Lock the door at 10:10, not 10 or 10:15. Every instruction had a precise window, and violating them meant falling into step with the building's rhythm instead of staying outside it. I'd already broken Rule 3 by looking at the monitor at midnight. Now I'd missed the 3rd ring. I didn't know what that meant yet, but the figure in the hallway kept moving closer and the doors kept closing in time with the phone, and I was pretty sure I was about to find out. Ring 22. Another door down. The figure jerked forward again, Now maybe 10 feet from the camera, I could see the badge more clearly. White rectangle with dark text and a photo in the upper left corner. Standard ID layout. I shoved the chair back and stood up fast. There was a closet. I'd noticed it earlier but hadn't opened it. Small door next to the filing cabinet, no label, just a metal handle. I crossed the office in 3 steps and yanked it open. Breaker panel. Gray metal box mounted on the back wall of the closet with the door hanging open and a column of black switches inside, each one labeled in faded marker. HVAC, lights, exterior, CCTV. I flipped CCTV down without thinking. The monitors went black. All 4 feeds died instantly, the screens cutting to nothing. The office lights died too. I hadn't touched that switch. I was sure I hadn't. But the fluorescence overhead clicked off, and the room dropped into darkness lit only by the glow of my phone face down on the desk and the faint green LED on the gate keypad visible through the office window. The bleach smell hit me like a wall, thick and choking, slamming into my nose and throat so fast I gagged. Worse than before. Way worse. I stumbled back from the breaker closet, hand over my mouth, eyes watering. The phone kept ringing, but now it sounded wrong. Closer. Like it wasn't coming from the desk anymore. Like it was coming from inside the room. Behind me. Next to me. I couldn't tell. The sound bounced off the walls in the dark, and I couldn't pin it down. Something scraped down the outside of the door. Wet. Heavy. Dragging from top to bottom in one long, slow pull, then stopping. Then starting again, higher up, and dragging down again. The sound made my skin crawl. It wasn't metal or wood. It was something soft and slick moving against the door's surface, leaving a trail I couldn't see but knew was there. I backed up until I hit the desk. My hand found the duffel bag. I dug through it, shoved aside the thermos and sandwich, found the flashlight at the bottom. The one from my car, not the dead one in the filing cabinet. I clicked it on. The beam cut through the dark and landed on the desk. The visitor log clipboard sat there where I'd left it after the knocks at 1:37. But the top sheet had new writing on it. I picked up the clipboard and held the flashlight closer. Cramped handwriting, different from the neat cursive that had spelled out Rebecca Herrera's name earlier. This was small and uneven, crammed into the message section below the signature line in blue ink that looked too dark, almost black. You volunteered, turned off the only witness. Restore CCTV before 2 a.m. if you want sunrise. The monitors aren't only for you. I read it twice. My hands were shaking hard enough that the flashlight beam jumped across the page. The phone kept ringing. 28, 29. The scraping sound moved along the door again, lower this time, near the gap at the bottom. I could hear it clearly even over the bleach burning my throat and the ringing drilling into my skull. I looked at my phone. 1:54 a.m., 6 minutes. I crossed back to the breaker closet, swung the flashlight beam inside, and found the CCTV switch still in the down position. My hand hovered over it. The scraping got louder, faster. Something was moving out there right outside the door, inches from where I'd been standing earlier. 1:56. I flipped the switch up. The monitors blazed back to life. All 4 feeds returned instantly. Gate camera showing the empty fence. B-row exterior showing the 3 orange unit doors under the floodlight. Bottom right, still static. And B-17 showing an empty hallway with all 5 unit doors closed. Floor dry, no figure anywhere. The phone stopped ringing mid-ring. Just cut off clean, leaving silence. The scraping stopped. The knocks I'd been hearing in the background, faint rhythmic taps I hadn't consciously registered until they vanished. Those stopped too. The bleach smell faded in seconds. Gone so fast I wondered if I'd imagined it, except my eyes were still watering and my throat still burned. But the office lights stayed off. I stood there in the dark with the flashlight in my hand, watching the monitor glow in the corner. The feeds cycled normally. Timestamp ticking forward. 1:58, 1:59, 2 a.m. Nothing happened. I sat back down, kept the flashlight on, watched the monitors and the door and the clock on the wall that I could barely see in the darkness. The building settled. The heater kicked on, rattling through the vent. Wind outside, distant highway sounds. I didn't move for 4 hours. At 6 a.m. exactly, the office lights clicked on by themselves. The fluorescents buzzed to life overhead, flooding the room with that flat white glow. I blinked hard, eyes adjusting. The monitors still showed the same feeds. Gate empty, B row quiet, B17 hallway clear. I stood up, walked to the door, pulled my keys from my pocket and unlocked the deadbolt, turning it slowly until it clicked free. I gripped the handle and pulled the door open. The air outside smelled like dust and cardboard. Normal storage facility smell. Dry and stale but clean. No bleach. No chemical burn. Just old concrete and metal and whatever people kept locked in units. I stepped outside. The lot looked the same as when I'd arrived. Rows of orange doors. Floodlights buzzing on their poles. Chain-link fence. My car parked near the office. Dawn light just starting to creep over the horizon, turning the sky gray. I walked toward B row. Took me maybe 2 minutes to reach B17. The unit was on the ground level, third door from the left in the row. Orange roll-up door, same as all the others. Padlock hanging open on the latch. But the door was dented, inward, from the outside, like something had pressed hard against the metal, right in the center, and tried to push through. The dent was maybe a foot wide, deep enough that the door's horizontal ridges had buckled and warped. But it hadn't broken. Whatever had pushed had failed to get inside. I stood there for a minute, maybe longer. Then I turned around and walked back to the office. By noon, I'd quit. I didn't call. I just drove home, packed my stuff from the office into my duffel, left the keys and the protocol sheet on the desk, and got in my car. I took a photo of the dented door on my way out, took another photo of the protocol sheet before I left it. Rebecca texted me at 12:30 asking why I'd left early. I sent her both photos, no message, just the images. She replied 4 minutes later. The rules aren't company policy. The last guard who ignored them didn't make it to morning. I didn't respond. I blocked the number and kept driving south on Highway 53 toward Minneapolis. I'd lost the bonus, lost the job, lost the free storage unit I didn't even need anymore because I'd probably lose my apartment too without income. But my hand stayed steady on the wheel and I kept my speed exactly at the limit and I didn't look in the rearview mirror. Leaving while the building allowed, it felt like the only outcome I could trust.